Admiral Jake Collins stood on the bridge of the colony ship New Hope and watched the alien vessels streak past Earth without slowing down. The massive ships were beautiful in their own way, with smooth curves and glowing energy fields that made human technology look like stone tools. But they were not stopping. They were not even sending a message. "Sir, we're receiving the final transmission from the Confederation," Lieutenant Kate Sullivan said from her station. Her voice was steady, but Jake could hear the tension underneath. They all knew what this meant. The holographic display flickered to life, showing the image of High Commander Zexhai of the Vexstar species. His four eyes were cold and his translated voice carried no emotion at all. "Primitive species of the third planet. The ancient threat has returned to our galaxy. The Devourers have awakened from their long sleep, and they consume everything in their path. The Confederation worlds must evacuate immediately. We cannot spare resources for lesser civilizations. You are on your own. This is our final communication." The transmission ended. Jake stared at the empty hologram for a long moment, feeling the weight of 50 years of rejection settle on his shoulders like a heavy blanket. 50 years ago, when the aliens first made contact with Earth, humanity had been so excited. They thought they were joining a great galactic community. Instead, they were told they were too primitive, too violent, too unpredictable to be trusted with advanced technology or membership in the Confederation. "Admiral, we're detecting massive energy signatures from the outer system," Dr. Lisa Grant reported from the science station. She was one of the few humans who had been allowed to study alien technology, though always under strict supervision. "The Confederation evacuation fleets are using our solar system as a transit corridor." "They're not even asking permission," Jake nodded grimly. Of course they weren't asking. To them, humanity was barely more intelligent than the animals in Earth's zoos. Why would you ask permission from the zoo animal before walking through its cage? "How many ships?" he asked. "Hundreds, sir. Maybe thousands. They're moving fast, heading for the galactic rim. It looks like they're abandoning the entire inner galaxy." Commander Ryan Parker, who had been quiet until now, stepped forward. Ryan was in charge of the human settlement on Kepler 442b1, of the few colonies humanity had managed to establish in the last 50 years. If they're abandoning the inner galaxy, that means Earth is right in the path of whatever's coming. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. He had served in the Earth Defense Force for 30 years, fighting off raiders and protecting merchant ships. But this was different. This was something that had scared the most advanced species in the galaxy into running away like frightened children. "What do we know about these Devourers?" Jake asked Dr. Grant. She pulled up what little information they had managed to gather over the years. "Not much, sir. The Confederation classified most information about them. From what we could learn, they're some kind of ancient machines that consume entire star systems. They appeared in this galaxy millions of years ago, destroyed several civilizations, then disappeared. The surviving species built the Confederation partly to prepare for their return. And now they're back," Ryan said quietly. "Sir, I'm picking up another transmission," Kate said suddenly. "It's not from the Confederation, it's from one of the evacuation ships." The new hologram showed a different alien, this one from the Kethmore species. Unlike the cold Vexstar commander, this one looked terrified. "Human vessels, this is Captain Vorthik of the merchant ship Stellar Wind. We know the Confederation has abandoned you, but you must understand the danger. The Devourers are not just weapons, they are something worse. They learn from every battle, adapt to every strategy. They consumed my home system in less than 6 hours. 6 hours for a civilization that had stood for 10,000 years. The transmission cut out suddenly, as if the ship had jumped to faster than light speed in the middle of sending it. Jake looked around the bridge at his crew. These were good people, humans who had volunteered to help establish colonies in case Earth ever needed to evacuate. They had families back home, dreams of a better future among the stars. Now they were facing something that had made the galaxies. Most advanced species run in terror. "Admiral," Dr. Grant said softly, If the Devourers are heading for the inner galaxy, Earth has maybe weeks before they arrive. Maybe less, Jake made his decision. It was the same kind of decision humans had been making for thousands of years when faced with impossible odds. They would fight, and if they couldn't fight, they would run, and if they couldn't run, they would hide. But they would never give up. Signal all human ships and colonies, he ordered. We're implementing Emergency Protocol 7, all non-essential. Personnel are to evacuate Earth immediately. Colony ships will head for the furthest systems we can reach. Dr. Grant, I want you to take everything we know about alien technology and get it to the colonies. If we're going to survive this, we need every advantage we can get. Sir, where are we going? Kate asked. Jake looked out at the stars, at the alien ships still streaming past Earth like they were fleeing from death itself. We're going to do what humans have always done when the galaxy tells us we're not good enough. We're going to prove them wrong. Ryan stepped up beside him. The Kepler colony can take 50,000 refugees. It's not much, but it's a start. Every life counts, Jake said. Get the word out. We're not going to sit here and wait to die. The Confederation thinks we're primitive? Good. Maybe being primitive is exactly what we need to survive what's coming. As the New Hope began preparations for the largest evacuation in human history, Jake couldn't help but think about the irony. For 50 years, humanity had begged to be accepted by the galaxy's advanced species. Now, abandoned and alone, they were about to find out if being human was enough to survive in a universe that had already given up on them. The alien ships continued their flight past Earth, and Jake Collins began the desperate race to save as many humans as possible before the Devourers arrived. Captain Alex Turner was 3 days out from the Kepler colony when the universe changed forever. The exploration vessel Pioneer had been running silent, trying to avoid the massive alien evacuation fleets that were still streaming through human space. Alex had orders to scout the outer systems and report back on any signs of the approaching threat. Captain, I'm picking up something strange, Lieutenant Kate Sullivan said from her communications station. She had transferred to the Pioneer after Admiral Collins recommended her for deep space reconnaissance. It's not like anything we've seen before. Alex moved to look at her screens. The sensor readings showed a massive distortion in space, like reality itself was being twisted into impossible shapes. How far out? About 2 light years, but it's moving fast. Whatever it is, it's heading straight for the inner systems. Kate's voice was tight with worry. Sir, I'm also detecting debris fields, lots of them. Dr. Ben Morrison looked up from his quantum physics station. He was one of the few humans who really understood how alien technology worked, even if he couldn't build it himself. Captain, those debris fields match the energy signatures of Confederation ships. Big ones. Alex felt his stomach drop. Show. The main screen lit up with a display that made everyone on the bridge go quiet. Scattered across several star systems were the remains of what had once been a Confederation fleet. These weren't just small ships either. Alex could see pieces of vessels that must have been kilometers long, twisted and broken like toys in the hands of an angry child. My God, Kate whispered. How many ships? Computer estimates over 300 vessels, Dr. Morrison said, his voice shaking slightly. This was a full battle fleet, one of their largest. Alex stared at the destruction. 300 ships, each one more advanced than anything humanity had ever built, destroyed so completely that they were barely recognizable as having once been spacecraft. What could do this? His question was answered when the sensors picked up movement in the debris field. Something was coming through the wreckage, something that made the hair on the back of Alex's neck stand up just looking at it. The Devourer ship was unlike anything in human or alien databases. It wasn't built. It was grown. Black metal flowed like liquid across its surface, constantly shifting and changing. Strange lights pulsed beneath its skin like a heartbeat. It was alive in a way that made no sense, a machine that breathed and thought and hungered. It's scanning the debris, Dr. Morrison reported, his instruments tracking the alien vessels. Energy patterns. It's not just looking at the wreckage. It's learning from it. As they watched, the Devourer ship extended tendrils of living metal into the remains of a Confederation cruiser. The alien wreckage began to dissolve, its materials flowing into the Devourer like water being absorbed by a sponge. But more than that, the ship was studying the technology, understanding it, making it part of itself. "Captain, we need to get out of here," Kate said urgently. "If that thing detects us—" "Wait," Alex said, something clicking in his mind. "Dr. Morrison, are you recording all of this?" "Yes, sir, full sensor sweep. Why?" "Because we might be seeing something no one else has lived to report. Keep recording. We need to understand what we're facing." The Devourer finished absorbing the cruiser and moved on to the next piece of wreckage. As it worked, Alex began to understand the terrible truth. This wasn't just destruction for the sake of destruction. This was consumption, learning, adaptation. The Devourers weren't just destroying the Confederation fleets. They were becoming them. "Sir, I'm detecting more ships," Kate reported. 3 more Devourers coming from different directions. Alex watched as the new arrivals began their own feeding process. Each ship was slightly different, as if they had adapted to consume different types of technology. One seemed specialized for energy weapons, another for defensive systems, a third for faster-than-light drives. "They're not just one species," Dr. Morrison said, understanding dawning in his voice. "They're a collective. Each ship specializes in countering specific technologies." "Which means," Alex said grimly, "they adapt to whatever they face." "The Confederation's advanced weapons? The Devourers study them, learn from them, then become immune to them." A new transmission crackled through the communications system. It was weak and full of static, but Kate managed to clean it up. The hologram showed a Vexstar officer, his 4 eyes wide with terror. "Any ships receiving this transmission, stay away from the core worlds. The Devourers have taken 7 systems in the past day. Our greatest weapons are useless against them. They adapt within hours to any strategy we use. The logical battle plans that have served us for millennia mean nothing. They predict our every move because our moves are predictable." The transmission cut out, but not before Alex caught something important in the alien's words. Predictable. The Confederation species were losing because they were too logical, too organized, too predictable. "Dr. Morrison," Alex said slowly, "what would happen if someone used completely illogical tactics against these things?" The scientist looked thoughtful. "In theory, if the Devourers adapt by studying patterns and predicting behavior, then truly random actions might confuse them. But no military force operates on pure chaos." "It would be suicide," Alex smiled grimly. "Doctor, you've obviously never served with human forces. Kate, send a message to Admiral Collins. Tell him we've found the enemy's weakness." "Sir, what weakness?" Kate asked. "The Devourers are perfect logical machines. They adapt to logical strategies and predictable behavior, but humans?" Alex looked at his crew, these people who had volunteered to fly into unknown danger just to gather information. "Humans are the most illogical, unpredictable, stubborn species in the galaxy. We do things that make no sense, fight battles we can't win, and succeed through pure spite and determination." Dr. Morrison was nodding slowly. "Random tactics, impossible strategies, decisions that no computer could predict or adapt to." "Exactly," Alex said. "The Confederation dismissed us as primitive and chaotic. Turns out, primitive and chaotic might be exactly what the galaxy needs." As the Pioneer slipped away from the debris field, Alex began composing his report. The Devourers were coming, and they were more dangerous than anyone had imagined. But they had a weakness, and humanity might be the only species crazy enough to exploit it. The universe was about to learn that sometimes the best defense against perfect logic was perfectly human insanity. Ambassador Sam Rodriguez was having the worst day of his diplomatic career when the first alien refugee ships arrived at the Kepler colony. 3 weeks had passed since Captain Turner's report about the Devourers, and the evacuation of Earth was still ongoing. The last thing anyone expected was for the same aliens who had abandoned humanity to come begging for help. "Sir, we have 17 Confederation vessels requesting permission to dock," Commander Ryan Parker reported from the colony's control center. His voice carried the same anger that every human felt when they saw those ships. They're running low on fuel and supplies. Sam looked at the display showing the alien vessels. They were damaged, their once beautiful hulls scarred and blackened. These weren't the proud warships that had streaked past Earth without stopping. These were the survivors, the ones who had managed to escape the Devourer's advance. "What's our policy on this?" Ryan asked. "Officially, we're supposed to follow Earth's humanitarian protocols. But these are the same species that called us primitive and left us to die." Sam understood the anger. Every human in the colony had lost someone in the evacuation. Families were scattered across a dozen star systems, and they still didn't know if Earth would survive the coming storm. But he also understood something else. If they turned away these refugees, they would be no better than the aliens who had abandoned them. "Let them dock," Sam said finally. "But make it clear that they're guests, not conquerors. They follow our rules while they're here." The first alien to come aboard was a Vexstar named Zexman. Unlike the cold, emotionless commander who had delivered the abandonment message, this one seemed broken. His 4 eyes were dim, and his movements were slow, like someone who had seen too much death. "Ambassador Rodriguez," Zexman said through his translator, "I must speak with your military commanders. We have information about the Devourers that your species needs to know." Sam led him to the colony's main conference room, where Chief Engineer Maya Chun and General Tony Blake were waiting. Maya was one of the most brilliant inventors in the human colonies, known for building weapons and tools that worked in ways that made no sense to anyone else. Tony was a veteran of the border wars, famous for winning battles through tactics that military academies said were impossible. "You have 5 minutes," Tony said bluntly. "Then you can explain why we should help the people who left us to die." Zexman says. Translator crackled as he spoke. "General Blake, my people made a terrible mistake. We thought our logic and advanced technology would be enough to stop the Devourers. We were wrong. They adapt to our strategies within hours. Every weapon we use against them, they turn against us. Every tactic we employ, they counter perfectly." Maya leaned forward. "Captain Turner mentioned something about adaptation. How exactly? Does it work? They study our technology by consuming it? Every ship they destroy, every weapon they encounter, becomes part of their knowledge. They can predict our moves because our moves are logical. Military doctrine, strategic planning, efficient deployment of resources. To them, we might as well be sending our battle plans in advance." Tony laughed grimly. "Sounds like you need some human chaos in your life." "That is exactly what we need," Zexman said, and for the first time, there was something like hope in his voice. "Your species' reputation for unpredictable behavior was one of the reasons the Confederation rejected your membership. You make decisions that no logical mind can understand. You fight battles you cannot win. You succeed through methods that should not work." Sam watched the exchange with growing interest. "What are you asking for?" "Help us fight in ways that make no sense. Teach us to be unpredictable. Show us how to win through chaos instead of logic." General Blake looked at Maya, who was already getting that gleam in her eyes that meant she was thinking about impossible weapons. "You want us to teach you how to be human? If that is what it takes to survive, yes." Over the next few days more, alien refugees arrived. Kethmer traders, Silcon warriors, even a few proud Nextide diplomats. Each group brought the same story. The Devourers were unstoppable because they were too logical, too perfect in their adaptations. They needed something that couldn't be predicted or countered. Maya threw herself into the challenge with the enthusiasm of someone who had been told her entire life that her ideas were too crazy to work. She started building weapons that functioned on random principles, guns that fired different types of ammunition in completely unpredictable patterns, shields that activated and deactivated based on the roll of dice, missiles that changed course randomly every few seconds. "This is insane," complained Dr. Veltar, a Vexstar scientist who was helping with the project. These weapons have no logical targeting system. They could hit anything. That's the point, Maya said cheerfully. How can the Devourers adapt to something that doesn't follow any rules? The first test came when a Devourer scout ship was detected approaching the system. Instead of following standard military doctrine, General Blake decided to try something completely different. He sent out a single human patrol ship with Maya's random weapons and orders to do whatever felt right. Captain Nick Foster was the pilot, a hotshot who had gotten in trouble more than once for ignoring orders and following his instincts instead. The kind of pilot who made commanding officers pull their hair out, but who somehow always came back. Alive, Nick, you're cleared to engage the enemy, Tony radioed. No battle plan, no tactical support. Just go out there and cause chaos, Nick grinned. Finally, a mission that makes sense. The alien refugees watched in amazement as the human pilot approached the Devourer ship in a completely random pattern. He fired weapons that shouldn't have worked, made course corrections that served no logical purpose, and generally fought like someone who had never heard of military strategy. The Devourer ship, designed to adapt to logical attacks, couldn't figure out what to do. It tried to predict Nick's movements, but there was nothing to predict. It attempted to counter his weapons, but the weapons changed function every few seconds. For the first time in recorded history, a Devourer ship hesitated. That hesitation was all Nick needed. He fired one of Maya's special missiles, a weapon that chose its own target based on pure chance. The missile struck the Devourer ship's power core, and the alien vessel exploded in a flash of twisted metal and strange energy. In the colony's control center, absolute silence fell. Then Zexman spoke, his voice filled with wonder. In all our recorded history, no one has ever destroyed a Devourer ship in single combat. How did he do it? General Blake smiled. He didn't think about it. That's the most human thing you can do. From that moment, everything changed. The alien refugees stopped looking at humans as primitive savages and started seeing them as teachers. They wanted to learn chaos, randomness, the art of making decisions without logic. And slowly, carefully, humans began to share their greatest secret. Sometimes the best way to solve a problem was to stop trying to solve it logically. Captain Nick Foster was quickly becoming the most famous human pilot in the galaxy, though he wasn't sure he liked the attention. 3 months had passed since his destruction of the first Devourer scout ship, and now alien commanders from across the remaining Confederation were asking for his help. The problem was, they wanted him to teach them something he didn't really understand himself. Captain Foster, please explain your tactical decision to approach the enemy vessel from below while firing upward, Commander Thexvol of the Silcon asked during the latest strategy meeting. The reptilian alien had been studying human combat techniques for weeks, taking notes on everything Nick did. Nick shrugged. It felt right. The Devourer was expecting me to come from the front or the sides, so I came from underneath. Made sense at the time. But why underneath specifically? Thexvol pressed. What was the logical reasoning? There wasn't any logical reasoning, that's the point. Nick looked around the room at the assembled alien officers and human advisors. You keep asking me to explain something that can't be explained. I just do what feels right in the moment. Dr. Amy Johnson, the human psychologist who had been studying what made humans so unpredictable, stepped forward. That's actually the key to understanding human combat effectiveness. We make decisions based on intuition, instinct, and pattern recognition that happens below the conscious level. We call it gut feeling. The aliens looked confused. Gut feeling wasn't something their logical minds could process easily. They were used to battle computers, detailed tactical analysis, and careful planning. The idea of making split-second decisions based on something as vague as intuition was foreign to them. How do we learn this gut feeling? Asked Admiral Kekstar, the highest-ranking Confederation officer still alive after the Devourer attacks. You don't learn it, Nick said. You just trust it. But that's the problem. You've been trained for thousands of years to ignore your instincts and follow logic instead. Commander Joe Martinez, who was leading the first joint human-alien fleet, had a different approach. Maybe we can't teach aliens to think like humans, but we can put humans in charge of the thinking part. Let the aliens handle the technical stuff, but let humans make the tactical decisions. The idea was revolutionary. For the first time in galactic history, primitive humans would be giving orders to advanced alien species. Some of the alien officers looked uncomfortable with the concept, but they had seen the results of human unpredictability. It worked. The first test of this new command structure came when a Devourer battle group was detected heading for the Rigel system. Instead of following standard evacuation procedures, the Joint Fleet decided to make a stand. 3 human ships and 12 alien vessels, commanded by humans but crewed by aliens. Nick was given command of the lead squadron, even though he had never commanded more than his own ship before. "Just do what you always do," Joe Martinez told him over the communications system. "Don't think too hard about it." The Devourer ships entered the system in perfect formation, their black hulls shifting and flowing as they analyzed the defending fleet. According to all military doctrine, the human-alien force should have retreated. The Devourers had superior numbers, better technology, and the advantage of adaptation. Instead, Nick did something that made every military academy in the galaxy cross him off their guest speaker list. He split his forces randomly, sending ships in different directions with no coordination between them. Then he ordered each ship to attack different targets using whatever weapons they felt like using. "This is madness," muttered Captain Valhai, the Vexstar officer serving as Nick's tactical advisor. "We're violating every principle of fleet combat." "Good," Nick replied. "The Devourers are expecting us to fight like a proper fleet. Let's disappoint them." The battle that followed was unlike anything in recorded military history. Human commanders made decisions that seemed insane to their alien crews but somehow worked. Ships broke formation for no apparent reason, only to avoid Devourer attacks that hadn't been fired yet. Weapons were used in ways they were never designed for, creating effects that even their builders didn't understand. The Devourer ships, designed to adapt to logical strategies, began to malfunction. Their adaptation systems couldn't process the random nature of human tactics. They tried to predict attack patterns that didn't exist, counter strategies that changed from moment to moment, and defend against weapons that shouldn't have worked, but did. "Sir, the lead Devourer ship is showing signs of system failure," reported Lieutenant Kate Sullivan from the communications station. "Its hull is fluctuating like it's trying to adapt to multiple different technologies at once." Nick grinned. "That's because it is. Fire everything we've got at it, all at once." The combined firepower of the human-alien fleet struck the confused Devourer ship, and for the first time in millions of years, a Devourer capital ship exploded. The other enemy vessels, seeing their lead ship destroyed by tactics they couldn't understand, began to retreat. "They're running," Captain Velhai said in amazement. "The Devourers are actually running from us." The victory at Rigel changed everything. Word spread through the remaining Confederation worlds that humans had not only fought the Devourers, but had actually made them retreat. Suddenly, the primitive species that had been rejected from the galactic community was being hailed as saviors. More importantly, the aliens were beginning to understand something fundamental about human nature. Humans didn't succeed despite their chaotic tendencies. They succeeded because of them. The same unpredictability that had made them seem primitive was actually a highly advanced survival mechanism. Dr. Johnson's research confirmed what many humans had suspected all along. Human creativity, the ability to find solutions that no logical mind would consider, was evolution's answer to a universe full of logical predators. When faced with an enemy that could adapt to any logical strategy, the illogical became the ultimate weapon. "We're not primitive," Nick said during a meeting with the Joint Fleet commanders. "We're just different. And sometimes different is exactly what you need." Admiral Kekstar, who had initially been skeptical of human leadership, nodded slowly. "Captain Foster, I formally request that you take command of the combined fleet. It appears that in a war against perfect logic, we need perfect chaos." Nick looked around the room at the alien officers who were now looking at him with respect instead of confusion. I accept on one condition. We do this my way. No battle plans, no tactical manuals, no logical strategies. We fight like humans. And we win like humans. And how do humans win? Asked Commander Thexville. Nick smiled. By being too stubborn to lose and too crazy to quit. Admiral Chris Thompson stood in the command center of what had once been the most advanced space station in the galaxy. The Vexstar had built it as their ultimate military headquarters, a place where logical minds could plan perfect strategies. Now it was home to something the builders never could have imagined: organized chaos. "Admiral, we're receiving reports from all sectors," Dr. Kelly Brooks said as she updated the massive display screen. Kelly had become the galaxy's leading expert on what she called chaos-based technology, weapons and systems that functioned on randomness rather than precision. "Operation Wildcard is exceeding all expectations." Chris nodded as he watched the display. 6 months had passed since Nick Foster's victory at Rigel, and the war against the Devourers had changed completely. Instead of running and hiding, the combined human-alien forces were now on the attack, using tactics that made no sense to anyone except the humans who planned them. "Show me the Centauri front," Chris ordered. The display zoomed in on a star system, where Captain Don Walsh was leading what he called a guerrilla space operation. Don had been a Marine before the war, trained in hit-and-run tactics against human enemies. Now he was applying those same principles to space combat, and the results were devastating for the Devourers. "Dan's forces hit 3 Devourer supply convoys in the past week," Kelly reported. Each attack was completely different from the last. "The Devourers can't adapt because there's no pattern to adapt to," Chris smiled. Dan's approach was perfectly human: strike hard, strike fast, then disappear before the enemy could respond. But more than that, he never used the same tactic twice. Sometimes he attacked from long range with missiles that changed course randomly. Sometimes he sent small fighters in close to plant bombs that exploded on timers no computer could predict. Sometimes he didn't attack at all, just made noise to draw Devourer forces away from more important targets. "Sir, incoming transmission from the Vega sector," Lieutenant Kate Sullivan announced. She had been promoted to Chris's personal communications officer after proving herself invaluable at understanding alien technology. "It's from Admiral Zexman." The hologram showed the Vexstar commander who had first asked humans for help. Over the past months, he had been working closely with human advisors, trying to learn what he called the art of productive confusion. His 4 eyes were brighter now, and he moved with the kind of energy that came from winning battles instead of losing them. "Admiral Thompson, I am pleased to report that the Third Fleet has successfully liberated the Proxima system," Zexman announced. "We use the strategy that Captain Foster calls throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks," Chris laughed. That was one of Nick's favorite expressions, and it perfectly described human military philosophy. Instead of carefully planning each attack, human commanders would try dozens of different approaches simultaneously, keeping what worked and abandoning what didn't. "How did the Devourers respond?" Chris asked. "They appeared to suffer what Dr. Johnson calls logical overload," Zexman replied. "Their adaptation systems could not process the simultaneous use of 17 different tactical approaches. 3 of their ships actually shut down completely, allowing our forces to capture them intact. That was new. In all the previous battles, Devourer ships had either won or been destroyed. The idea that they could be confused into surrendering was something no one had expected. "Dr. Brooks, add those ships to your research list," Chris ordered. "If we can understand how they work, maybe we can build countermeasures." Kelly nodded eagerly. She had been studying captured Devourer technology for months, trying to understand how machines designed for perfect logic could be defeated by perfect chaos. Her research was leading to breakthroughs that amazed even her. "Sir, we're also receiving reports from Earth," Kate said. "The home system defense grid is now fully operational." Chris felt a surge of pride. When the war began, Earth had been defenseless, abandoned by the galaxy and facing certain destruction. Now it was the command center for the largest military operation in galactic history. Human engineers working with alien refugees had built weapons and defenses that combine the best of both technologies, alien precision powered by human unpredictability. What's our overall status? Chris asked. Kelly pulled up the galactic map, showing areas of human and alien control in blue, Devourer territory in red, and contested systems in yellow. 6 months ago, the map had been almost entirely red. Now, blue was spreading across dozens of star systems. We've liberated 47 worlds and established defensive positions in over 100 systems, Kelly reported. The Devourers are being pushed back on all fronts. More importantly, they're starting to avoid systems where they know humans are present. That was the most encouraging news of all. The Devourers, who had been unstoppable for millions of years, were now afraid of human forces. They still adapted to alien strategies, but human chaos was something they couldn't handle. Sir, there's something else, Kate said quietly. We're receiving surrender requests. Chris stared at her. Surrender requests from who? Devourer ships. 3 separate vessels have sent what our computers translate as cessation of hostility requests. They want to stop fighting. The command center fell silent. The idea that Devourer ships could surrender was beyond anything anyone had imagined. These were machines designed for one purpose: consumption and adaptation. The concept of giving up should have been impossible for them. How do we respond to a surrender request from a machine? Chris asked. Very carefully, Kelly said. If they're truly surrendering, it means their logical systems have concluded that continuing the fight is pointless. But it could also be a trap. Chris thought about it. This was the kind of decision that alien commanders would spend weeks analyzing, running computer simulations and risk assessments. But he was human, and humans made decisions based on instinct as much as logic. Accept the surrenders, he said finally. But keep them under heavy guard and isolated from each other. If they're genuinely giving up, we can learn from them. If it's a trap, we'll be ready. Sir, with respect, that's an enormous risk, said Commander Velhai, the Vexstar officer who served as Chris's tactical advisor. Commander, this entire war has been an enormous risk, Chris replied. 6 months ago, everyone said it was impossible to fight the Devourers. Now we're winning. Sometimes you have to trust your gut instead of your computer. As the reports continued to come in from across the galaxy, Chris realized that something fundamental had changed. The war was no longer about survival, it was about victory. And for the first time since the Devourers had returned, the galaxy had hope. The tide had turned, and it had turned because humanity had taught the galaxy a simple lesson. Sometimes the best way to win was to stop trying to be perfect and start trying to be impossible. Fleet Admiral Mike Stewart stood on the bridge of the Earth's Pride and watched the largest fleet in galactic history prepare for the final battle. 9 months had passed since the war began, and now humanity led a combined force of over 10,000 ships from every surviving species in the galaxy. The irony wasn't lost on him. The species that had been rejected as too primitive now commanded the most advanced military force ever assembled. Admiral Dr. Williams reports that the quantum uncertainty weapon is ready for deployment, Captain Luke Davis announced from his position at the tactical station. Luke had become Mike's most trusted commander, known for his ability to make impossible decisions, work through sheer determination and creative thinking. Dr. Sarah Williams was the genius behind their final weapon against the Devourers. Working with captured enemy technology and human chaos theory, she had created something that shouldn't have been possible, a weapon that functioned on pure randomness, changing its effects every time it was fired. Even she didn't know exactly what it would do when activated. How are our alien allies holding up? Mike asked. Better than expected, sir, Luke replied. Admiral Zexman reports that his Vexstar crews have successfully adopted what he calls controlled chaos protocols. They're actually enjoying the unpredictability. Mike smiled at that. Over the past months, the alien species had slowly learned to embrace the human way of thinking. It wasn't easy for minds trained in pure logic, but desperation was a powerful teacher. They had discovered that there was a strange kind of freedom in abandoning perfect planning and trusting instinct instead. Sir, we're detecting massive energy signatures from the Devourer mothership, reported the sensor operator. It's the size of a small moon and heavily defended. Long-range scans show at least 50,000 Devourer vessels surrounding it. The mothership was the source of all Devourer forces, a massive construct that had been consuming galaxies for millions of years. Intelligence suggested that destroying it would shut down every Devourer in the universe, but getting close enough to attack it would require passing through the largest concentration of enemy forces ever assembled. Any logical military mind would call this suicide, observed Commander Thexville, the Silcon officer who had become Mike's strategic advisor. Over the months of working with humans, even his reptilian features had learned to express something like amusement. Fortunately, we are no longer operating under logical military doctrine. Mike looked at the tactical display showing their fleets. Position. By every rule of space warfare, they should retreat and look for a better opportunity. The enemy had superior numbers, better defensive positions, and the advantage of fighting in their own territory. A logical commander would wait for reinforcements or try to find a weakness to exploit. Instead, Mike was going to do the most human thing possible, attack directly into the strongest point of the enemy's defenses using a plan that made no sense to anyone, including himself. All ships, this is Admiral Stewart, Mike announced over the fleet communications. We're going to do something that every military academy in the galaxy would call insane. We're going to split our forces into completely random groups, attack from every direction simultaneously, and hope that our chaos-based weapons work better than our theories suggest they will. He paused, looking around the bridge at his crew, humans and aliens working together in ways that should have been impossible. Remember, we're not trying to win through superior strategy or better technology. We're trying to win by being so unpredictable that the enemy can't adapt fast enough to stop us. Trust your instincts, ignore the tactical computers, and do whatever feels right. The fleet began to move, breaking apart into hundreds of smaller groups that headed toward the Devourer mothership along completely random trajectories. Some groups flew in straight lines, others followed complex spirals, and a few simply wandered around in circles before suddenly accelerating toward their target. There was no coordination, no master plan, no logical structure to the attack. It was pure, beautiful chaos, and the Devourers had no idea how to respond to it. Sir, the enemy adaptation systems are showing signs of overload, Luke reported as they watched the Devourer ships trying to respond to the human attack. They're attempting to counter 17 different tactical approaches simultaneously. The closer they got to the mothership, the more obvious it became that the Devourers were struggling. Their perfect logical minds, designed to adapt to any strategy, couldn't process the complete lack of strategy. Ships that should have been coordinating their attacks were flying in random directions. Weapons that should have been targeting the most dangerous threats were firing at whatever happened to be closest. Dr. Williams, are you ready? Mike asked. Sarah's voice came over the communications from the weapons control center. As ready as anyone can be for firing a weapon that operates on pure quantum uncertainty. I have no idea what's going to happen, but that's exactly the point. Fire when ready. The quantum uncertainty weapon activated with a sound like reality tearing apart. Energy that followed no known laws of physics lanced out from the Earth's pride toward the Devourer mothership. As it traveled, the beam changed colors, intensities, and even fundamental properties, becoming something new every few seconds. The mothership's defensive systems tried to adapt to the incoming attack, but there was nothing consistent to adapt to. The beam was fire, then ice, then pure energy, then something that didn't exist in any physics textbook. The ancient construct's logical mind, which had successfully defended against every attack for millions of years, simply couldn't understand what it was facing. The beam struck the mothership's core, and for a moment nothing happened. Then the massive structure began to collapse in on itself, its adaptation systems turning against each other in an endless loop of confusion. The explosion that followed lit up half the star system. Throughout the galaxy, every Devourer ship suddenly went dark. The logical network that had connected them to their mothership was severed, leaving them as nothing more than empty metal shells drifting in space. "Sir, we're receiving surrender transmissions from across the galaxy," Kate Sullivan reported from the communications station. "Every remaining Confederation world is reporting that the Devourer ships in their systems have shut down." Mike felt the weight of command lift from his shoulders. It was over. The ancient threat that had terrorized the galaxy for millions of years had been defeated by the most primitive species anyone could imagine. "Admiral Stewart," came a transmission from Admiral Zexman. "On behalf of every species in the galaxy, I formally request that humanity accept leadership of the new Galactic Alliance. It appears that the universe needs the kind of thinking that only humans can provide." Mike looked around the bridge at his crew, these people who had saved the galaxy by refusing to think like everyone else. "We accept, on one condition. This time, we do things differently. No more dismissing species because they seem primitive. No more assuming that logical thinking is always the best thinking. We build something new, something that celebrates the chaos as much as the order." As the Earth's pride began its journey back to Earth, Mike realized that humanity had done more than just win a war. They had taught the galaxy that sometimes the best solutions came from the most unexpected places, and that being different wasn't a weakness, it was the greatest strength of all.